Day, Tuesday, February 21st, 2023. The time is 4:04 p.m. The board members are present here at City Hall, along with members of the public. With the assistance of the Communications Department and the Information Technology Department, this meeting is live streamed on the Ethics Board's website, and we're recording it for future reference. There's a delay with the online communications, and we should all be patient. As always, we thank those members of the City of Tallahassee for their support. This time, please rise for Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Tasker, please call the roll.
Carlos Ray,
Present.
Ernie Payne,
Here.
Kristen Costa,
Here.
and we have, how you pronounce it? Adam
Commissar present.
Commissar. We have Patrick Kelly.
No, Keely.
Keely.
Everybody's correcting you, so I said, why not, right? I'm here.
Now on the Keely.
Floyd,
Well, you don't have to, it's just
Rika,
Rika's not here, but
not here yet.
we have a quorum. That's okay. Thank you, Ms. Tasker. Moving on to the approval of the minutes for December 13th, 2023. All members received the minutes for review. Yes. Edits, comments, or changes that need to be done to the minutes? If there are none, I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Kelly, do I have a second by Ms. Costa. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. At this time, we'll review the public comment on agenda and non-agenda items, procedures, public comments, and conducting the meeting. For those attending the meeting online, please make sure your microphone is muted. Last week, we asked the public to make a request by email to ethics@talgov.com by 1 p.m. on the day of the meeting, if they wish to speak online on agenda or non-agenda items. Those who have submitted their names will be given a chance to speak as scheduled. For those of you who are present and wish to speak, please complete a request form and forward it to the Administrative Specialist, Ms. Tasker, Leverson Green. Are there any public comments on agenda items?
yes, we have a Ben Wilcox.
That was on non-agenda.
Non-agenda items, okay.
We have both of them at the.
Oh, both at the same time? Okay, we'll do both at the same time then, it seems. So, Mr. Wilcox, a non-agenda item?
Well, I'm Ben Wilcox with Citizens for Ethics Reform. We're a coalition of groups that were originally responsible for the ordinance that created this board here. So I wanted to, as such, welcome the new board members and thank you all for your service. And also have some sad news. A longtime member of our coalition, one of the co-founders of the coalition, Marilyn Wills, has passed away after a long, struggle with cancer, basically. And so just wanted to let you know that there'll be one less of us to join your meetings. So
Am I asking? Yes. When did she pass?
it's been a couple of weeks now.
Okay.
I think she was even more than just one. That's a loss. I'm sorry to hear that. Any other
We have one
comments?
from Stanley Sims. You don't have any.
Is this a non-agenda item comment, Mr. Sims?
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Stanley Sims. I'm a community advocate on that 1320 Avondale Way. I'm very sorry for your loss. Wow, that hits. but I'm here because I think that the integrity of our government is under war. And I feel that personally. And you guys, there's some of you members here that are new, some of you are old. But currently, I have filed a complaint with this board back in November. And I've yet to be able to say what is the status of that complaint. Now, to me, that's irresponsible. Why is that irresponsible? Because on December 7th, during a regular city commission meeting, I was heckled like the President of the United States was heckled at the State of Union. I was heckled by the Chief of Police. I'm sorry, but that takes a moment being Black. I have tried to file my complaint with city officials. I have now been told by the city manager that he will not deal with this issue. I have gone to the IA of the Tallahassee Police Department. None of my emails, none of my calls have been returned. I have also even gone to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. And they have investigated and said, Mr. Sims, your only recourse is the city manager and the mayor. Well, the auditor has restricted my access because of justification says that I misrepresent communications when I speak publicly. Underquote, that when I don't agree with him, then he can restrict my access as well as his employees as how they interact with me.
30 seconds.
Well, I might go to jail today because I've got a little bit more. Because you have not done your job. It is February. It is February. I have a no trespassing warrant in his building that has been aggressively sought with documentation clearly showing my innocence. But you guys says that that is beyond your ramifications. Well, I believe today that this is dialect of duty. My family and my safety is at risk here, guys. This is no longer a game. George Floyd has let me know it ain't over yet. And for no response from you, your silence is violence, Mr. Carlos.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. At this time, I'll take the opportunity to introduce our new board members.
Can I make a comment before we?
Sure. Mr. Kelly?
Has there been a complaint filed?
Yes.
Yes, we keep those confidential, and I have communicated with them. And I will go as far as
Mr. Sims, you're not recognized.
I will go as far as to say that I've spoken to him on more than one occasion. We have not evaluated his complaint yet for administrative reasons. But I have told him on the issue that he spoke about that his only real recourse is to get an attorney. It's a legal issue and beyond the board's jurisdiction. There are other things that we'll look at. So, you know, and I've also given him 2 organizations that he may go to. So we have acted with empathy and we have done a job.
Okay, I just wanted to put that on the record that we have responded. Thank you.
Thank you. This time, I'd like to introduce, we have a lot of new faces here. Let us go down to that side. Ms. Tasker, I'm sorry, pronouncing Ms. Tasker Leverson Green.
That is great.
Welcome aboard. Tell us a little bit about your background and
I've been with the city. Next month will actually be 16 years, from the procurement, procurement section. But they split that section up into two departments, and I was in the disbursements unit. I maintained the P cards for all city employees, within the city. And I did some troubleshooting for card holders that had issues with their P card. I did solar wind tickets for issues. Basically, I was the point of contact between the bank and the, card holders within the city.
Okay, welcome aboard. Hope you enjoy your time with us and with him over there. You know what to get into, so.
For the record, in her short time here, I've already recognized that she's extremely proactive in performing her job, which is great. Great, great way to do the job. We appreciate it already.
Great to be on board. Mr. Adam Commissar.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Adam Commissar. I'm the new appointment by Jessica Yeary, the public defender for the Second Judicial Circuit. I actually moved to Tallahassee in high school, graduated from Childs, went to Florida for undergraduate and law school, came back here and worked as an assistant state attorney under Willie Meggs for a time period where I was actually paired up against Miss Yeary, so we would go against each other in court pretty regularly. After that, I worked for a firm, Jansen and Davis, doing mainly criminal defense in Tallahassee for about 8 years. And 2 years ago, started my own law firm with my partner, William Spicola. We do both civil and criminal.
Spicola. I know Spicola, good guy. Welcome on board. Glad to have you here. And Miss Rika Calhoun.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rika Calhoun. I am Chief Compliance and Ethics Officer at Florida A&M University. I lived in Tallahassee for some time, graduating from Florida State University with my master's degree before going to law school in William and Mary in Virginia. From there, I served as general counsel for some time at Western Illinois University before coming to FAMU and back to Tallahassee. So I'm really happy to be on the board and excited to work with you all.
Welcome on board. New faces. And a lot of change happened the last time we left.
Yep.
But it's good to see everybody. We're almost at full. We just need one more appointment.
Right.
It's not bad. And where we were to where we are, it's good. At this time, we're going to review public meeting laws. Mr. Reed, is that all you?
Yes, and I think, and I hate to, I think we've gone over a number of times, but since we do have some new ones, I think we want to just touch on a couple of issues. Public record law and the open meeting law, or the sunshine law. Public record law creates a right of access to records made or received in connection with your service on the board. The public record law is authorized by Article 1, Section 24A of the Florida Constitution, as found in Chapter 119 of Florida statute. This law applies to all government bodies, including this body. A public record is really going to be almost anything. It could be an email, a letter, a text message, audio recording, photographs, etc. And a public record is defined by its content. If it relates to the business of this board, it is a public record. And I think that's important to point out, because if you send an email from your personal email account as a board member, but it relates to board business, you have created a public record and you are under an obligation to retain that document. So the public record is defined by its content, not by the format or the means in which it's created. If it applies to city business, like I said, if it's a text message on your personal phone, you always read news stories about people there was a big story in Orlando where the county commission was texting lobbyists, didn't realize they were creating all these public records until somebody made a request, and then they got embarrassed in the Orlando Sentinel. So just keep that in mind. If there is a document that you feel is very important and you'd like to have it preserved by the city, and you don't want to go through the trouble of retaining yourself, the city has an email address where you can copy it. You can just CC retain@talgov.com, and that will automatically load it into a database that I think can be searched by keyword. I haven't used it in probably over a year and a half, but really if it's something very important Usually I'll want to punt it to the clerk's office, so if somebody makes a request, they can get to it and I don't have to dig through my phone emails. But that's something to consider. There are exceptions to, or exemptions to the public record law, and some deal specifically with this board under section 112.324. As Mr. Floyd had mentioned, the complaint that we had received and just discussed is still within its confidential and exempt from public record status. Essentially, any record that we receive is exempt and confidential until it reaches the probable cause stage, or if it's dismissed. If it's dismissed, if we find it has legal sufficiency, then once it reaches probable cause, whether we find probable cause or no probable cause, at that moment, it becomes a public record. But we do have exemptions for this board. As far as the sunshine law, that is authorized by Article 1, Section 24B of the Florida Constitution, and is found in Chapter 286. All public meetings must be, there's three little rules you need to remember. It needs to be open to the public. Reasonable notice needs to be made to the public, and minutes must be taken. Open to the public means reasonable accommodations, has to be ADA compliant, those types of issues. Reasonable notice is not defined by statute, so that's always an issue that you always get to fight in front of a judge about. And minutes do not, there's no real definition of what minutes are. It just has to be a general recording of what takes place. All meetings, which could include anything from a conversation, a phone call, or written correspondence like a text message, as I mentioned before, between two members. So essentially, everybody here that's a board member, you could socialize with each other, but you can't talk business outside of a publicly noticed meeting. It applies to two or more members of a board, state or local boards or commissions. They must have decision-making authority. State law does not apply to fact-finding bodies, but it does apply to those who advise or make recommendations. But local city policy does apply to fact-finding bodies. Doesn't matter. We actually go further. We actually have teeth in this board, so we are definitely under state and local sunshine laws.
Mr. Reed, one point to make. Board members can speak to you or to Dwight. That's not covered.
I have
Board members only.
yes, board members only. There is a conduit issue, which is one of my last points to make because that's an important one to make. And then the issue must concern matters that foreseeably come before the board. And so if you see each other in a public, don't feel like you have to go to the other side of the room and not even say hello. It's dealing with business. A couple of examples that I always like to mention is the Facebook example. There was a case a year or so ago, I think at the beginning of COVID, where two city commissioners got into it on Facebook about a vote that had already taken place. And people raised issues and said, wait a second, you're violating the sunshine law. More than likely they were, even though they did argue that since the vote had already taken place, it wasn't an issue that could come before the board. People said, well, you could always move to reconsider, or the issue could come back in the foreseeable future. So they had to be real careful with that. The Attorney General's issued a non-binding opinion, which I love because it seems so silly. But you've always seen your elected officials that go to a Chamber of Commerce breakfast, and they may get up on the dais and say what their dreams are for the city. As long as two elected officials don't speak to each other and only speak straight out to the audience, they don't violate the sunshine law. That's a non-binding opinion by the Attorney General. I don't think it's ever been litigated in court, but that's the old chamber. Just get that tunnel vision going and you should be okay. So the conduit provision or prohibition that I mentioned, you could talk to Dwight, you could talk to me, you could talk to Tasker. You can't pass messages through us to another board member that's using us as a conduit, and that would be a violation of the sunshine law. And then there are exemptions, just like the public records under 112.324 for investigations. We do often go into closed sessions when we have issues, whether sometimes we do it on legal sufficiency. We always do it for probable cause hearings. Those are always closed. They are, that exemption is provided in statute. So that's something to keep in. So does anybody have any questions? I wanted to keep it as brief as possible, under 5 minutes.
You need to ask at least one question so I can put this on record as being your annual training.
Oh, great.
He asked a question. so-
That's a question. Either.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, yeah, you can talk to us. I don't know why you want to, but we just don't use this as conduits. We're good.
That's Coach Floyd.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Reed. Mr. Floyd, Ethics Office Report.
Okay, and this is to give you our monthly report. And we omitted January, so this starts from December 13th through February 10th. On January 12th, we facilitated annual ethics training issues. And this was a joint effort of the Ethics Office, City Attorney's Office, and Inspector General's Office. John led the training. This time he got to use his whole, what was an hour?
Hour and a half or something.
Hour and a half. So I let him go first so he could get this.
Just so you know, last time, this guy wouldn't stop talking, like 10 minutes, for an hour and a half presentation.
It's
So
gonna
I told
happen.
him I wasn't showing up this time unless I got to go first.
And he did a great job. And then we heard from Rob Pace from the Inspector General's Office, which I thought was in some ways a highlight. No offense, but
You had a movie.
but the movie that had you all share, we presented that to them. And I thought it was significant because I'm just trying to get a message across to everybody that anybody can slide into an area of being unethical or even being corrupt when given the opportunity. And we emphasize the importance of reporting. And then Amy Tolman from the City Attorney's Office capped it off. And there were a lot of comments and questions, even though this time she got the short end of the time wise. And you would think she was just talking about public records and public meeting laws, but it turned out to be interesting, even though they've heard it many times, because the difference in what we do is that we engage the audience and make it relatable. So it was plenty of conversation. So I'm grateful to them. I'm also grateful to Allison Ferris for helping me with getting this noticed, because I almost missed that. Even though it was training, we wanted to get it noticed just to cover ourselves. So she helped with that. And finally, Dominique Robinson from the Technology Department, who stayed attentive and helped us get through the training. And I would say the Technology Department, in a lot of ways, we are independent, but realistically, we're not. We depend on we depend on HR, we depend on IT, and there are others that we consistently depend on, finance, on a daily basis. And it's important to have their cooperation, care and assistance, and we get all of that on a continuous basis. So Harold Lane and Dominique from the Technology Department, and today it's Craig. I appreciate the assistance. The training session was engaging and informative for everyone, and I would say that it was a success. Did several sessions of new employee training. And that's just what it says. When the city gets new employees, they have so many months to take ethics training. I give them a 2-hour course to go over the ordinances, to talk about the public standards. I give them 4 standards: state, city policy, the ethics code, and the public. And we go through a lot of scenarios so they can understand that even if it doesn't violate any rule, it may still be a public issue. And we talk about the impact of that on the city when even it's just a violation of the public standard. And it's usually engaging and very conversational. And I had one session with the fire department. I made a brief presentation. I say brief. According to John, it would be brief. I spoke for about an hour and a half with the fire department. With the fire department, with a graduate class at FSU. I was invited to give a presentation on creating a cultural environment, and I shared some of my strategies here. My previous job at FTLE, which had a strong reputation for being ethical and share that structure and how I saw that structure in light of the city. And that was a very good session. I attended training on how to process requisitions because in between losing Lucy and gaining Tasker, I had to do some of that myself. Plus, I wanted to just know how to do it. So I took training on requisitions. I met with the new board members who probably tired of hearing me. They've heard from me a lot in a short period of time. And we actually got their nameplates and their badges overnight. So we were very successful with that. Updated the ethics board website, responded to ethics complaints, started development of the annual ethics training for city employees, and that's ongoing. Emphasis this year will be modeling behavior, being and hold other people accountable, and reporting violations, MBR. And I will emphasize that to all 3,000 some employees between now and the end of July. And I filled the vacancy for the administrative specialist. I reviewed approximately 110 applications, invited 7 people to interview, actually ended up interviewing 3 people. Had the assistance of Denise Hart from the HR department, and we agreed that we would have been in good hands with either of the 3. But to be honest, I went with the person that I had my eye on from the time I read her application. And she's been here a little more than a week. I have to get used to not having to help her with anything because she's so independent, so tenacious, and as stubborn as me when it comes to not losing and getting things done and figure things out. So I'm very happy to have Tasker aboard, and I think you will be pleased with our partnership. And I'm going to tell her, John, to make sure you get things in on time, by the way. Don't say anything. I'm just messing with you.
All right.
I trust me, he'll get me back later.
Yeah.
And that is the report. That's the office report. Any questions about that part? The budget. This budget report was put together by our budget liaison. It's just a end of the year budget. I am actually going to come back to this next month. If you'll note, the third from the bottom, where it says vehicle garage expense, there's a credit of $31,400 some dollars. So I'll keep it, but I need them to explain all of a sudden. And it makes me wonder what else could be wrong if that's wrong. So we're going to have a sit down and have the liaison walk both of us through this to make sure we know where we are. When we hired Tasker, we moved it from a part-time position to a full-time position, and that took a little bit of work. We have to adjust the budget. We haven't done that yet, but we're going to take some money from other areas and put it into salary. And it doesn't show here, but just to give you an example, the campaign contribution refund is currently allocated at $20,000. It's just not going to happen. So it's there in other places where we have room to reallocate. Last year, at the end of the year, we had about $89,000 left over. Tasker is trying to get me not to be as stingy as I have been in the past. I think it's because she wanted an iPhone. She got one. She got what she wanted. But so she's been talking me out of being quite a little less conservative. Because it's just, I do that instinctively. And sometimes it's better to spend a little more money. So she's helping me with that. But we will remain solvent and we will come under our budget with money to spare. Yes, sir.
I know one of the things we had talked about in the past was somebody with web building experience and technical experience. Is that something you incorporated in this position?
She has worked with our intranet.
Okay.
And she is going to help with that. She's going to help with social media. She's going to help with training. So
All right.
And the last thing is the report. Here's the report. And you see then that there's an attachment to it. First one, caller says the city of Tallahassee was driving a vehicle recklessly. We checked treasury clerk's office. They hold the public records, and they assisted me in identifying, and the identification information that was provided was not a city vehicle. So there's nothing to do there. The second one was a Port Charlotte caller. So I gave her the number for the Ethics State Ethics Commission. Third caller was an elderly gentleman from West Palm Beach. He felt that he was not getting local assistance, so I gave him contact information at the FDLE, Florida Department of Law Enforcement, in the West Palm Beach office, and I gave him the number of the Palm Beach Ethics Commission instead of calling us, so to assist him with that. Then we had a complaint, individual alleging that her family was being endangered by the police department. She gave us over 100 and some pages of documentation, which included court records, gave us videos and photos. I watched a couple of videos that I thought were inappropriate, and at that point I stopped opening the videos. But we read thoroughly through her the material that she provided, and sent her a letter saying that this was not within our jurisdiction. I attached both the letter and the legal opinion from John that we used to inform her. So if you want to look at any of that, you can. Then we had a caller who contacted us through the hotline. That she spoke to a customer service representative who was unprofessional. I put her in touch with that person's supervisor, and that supervisor said that they would follow up with it. And finally, we had a complaint, a young lady who called me and said, regarding the identity theft. She was very excited, very let me talk. Eventually, she let me talk, and I gave her contacts in West Palm Beach, which included the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the State Attorney's Office. So I felt, even though these were not, we helped as much as we could. And at this time, we recommended closing these cases.
Second. Motion by Mr. Kelly, second by Mr. Comisar. Any questions on the report that will include Ms. Thomas? Memorandum as well. Answers. There are no comments or edits to it. And all those in favor of recommending closing these complaints?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Somebody want to talk? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Floyd. Moving on to whistleblower protections, Mr. Reed.
I think I'm just going to provide a brief recap of what we've done. I think Mr. Floyd has resubmitted our letter to the city commission, I think prior to the election. We provided our recommendations to changes to the ordinance dealing with whistleblower. And it goes back about a year, so I figured it might be good just to very brief. So the statute provides whistleblower protection for those that claim a violation of federal, state, or local law, rule, or regulation that presents a danger to health, safety, or welfare of the public, and also acts or suspected acts of gross mismanagement, malfeasance, misfeasance, gross waste of public funds, Medicaid fraud, or gross neglect of duty. The statute provides for a reporting mechanism for state agencies that authorizes to create their own procedures. In 2020, the City Commission created the Office of the Inspector General, which is the appropriate local official under the statute for that who could receive a whistleblower complaint. What we had discussed as a board is that the Inspector General is the city auditor who does not have jurisdiction over the mayor, the city commission, their staff, or I think the appointed officials. So this board felt it might be appropriate to extend whistleblower protections to those that offer a complaint that could be a violation of the ethics code, but also meet the statutory requirements for whistleblower complaint. Only when the respondent of said complaint is one of those individuals that fall outside the jurisdiction of the Inspector General, so those individuals could also enjoy the whistleblower protections available under the statute. So that's essentially what our proposals were. It was very narrow, would require that we work closely with the Inspector General's office, and we do have a very good relationship with his office, so I think that we would be able to do so. But I think we figured let's get to the new year and reintroduce it to the city commission, so that's what we have done.
Any response back from the city?
Not yet,
Not yet.
not yet.
Any questions from the board? Okay. Moving on to member discussion regarding desire for future agenda. So to let you know, I'll probably be out the next two meetings due to session schedules. So Ms. Costa will be up as chairperson. Any wishes or directives from the board for Mr. Floyd or Mr. Reed on future meetings? Anything for the good of the order? If none, Ms. Calhoun moves we adjourn. Mr. Commissar seconds.